Ms. Maka Botchorishvili, Chairperson of the Committee on European Integration, welcome to the Georgia Today interviews.
Thank you for your interest and reaching me out.
There was neither a request from the EU nor a public demand backed up with referendum results. So could you explain to us who or what made you think that there was a need for adopting the transparency of foreign influence law?
Well, first of all, I think we have to look at the decision-making process in Georgia and political process as such in Georgia and the role of non-governmental or civil organizations or civil society organizations in Georgia. You probably know that there are many organizations, more than 20,000 organizations registered. I don't know exact number, but that's definitely more than that, who are part of political life in Georgia. And we talk a lot about European integration, and one of the recommendations and part of this process is about civil society and engagement of civil society in the political processes and decision-making process. If you look at the EU recommendations, even what was provided to Georgia, there is a part that concerns to civil society and their participation of every level of decision-making process in Georgia. That's, I think, one of the factors that requires more transparent approach to those who are sitting around table, who want to be part of the political processes and political decisions. End of the day, whole weight of political decision is on the shoulders of politicians, and that's normal in any democratic society where we have elections, people express their will, who will be the government of the country, and then this government is responsible for all the political decisions they make. But in this situation, we have to heavily take into account positions coming from civil society and coming from non-governmental organizations. I think we have absolutely legitimate right to know more. What are the interests on the other side of the table or around the table? I think that will be also very important in the process of negotiations with the European Union. Word negotiation itself means that we may have different opinions on different things, and we have to work to bring our positions closer together and negotiate in this process. And I think it is also important to know that those organizations who are sort of voicing EU positions in Georgia, I think there should not be something that they hide, and it's normal to have organizations that would support more this or that positions. But what is legitimate, I think, that people and government should know what are the interests behind these organizations who want to be part of the political process and are part of political process in Georgia. And that is the main reasoning, just to, inform our citizens more and protect and prevent unwanted or wished results in our political processes that may emerge in the situation when we don't know or there is no transparency behind the non-governmental organizations.
From what I've been hearing from media channels like Imedi TV and Post TV, civil rights movements and NGOs such as Shame Movement and Eastwood have tried or prepared the ground for overthrowing the government in the past. If one of the main arguments for adopting this law is to find out who's been behind such anti-constitutional acts, why hasn't Georgia introduced it right after they tried it?
Well, I think you need to analyze when you see the problem, and you have to find right approach, what would be the best approach to handle this or that problem. In last years, we have observed that action of or positioning or behavior of this or that organization you named created ground for non-constitutional developments in Georgia. The most evident, I think, was during last elections in 2020, when we had ISFET's mistake about the parallel vote counting that created ground for protests, created ground for boycott, and end of the day, country suffered and damaged. We risked our reputation. We just wasted time for like bringing politicians in the parliament who were boycotting as it was discovered without the ground, and these kind of things. I don't think that Georgia has luxury to lose time in like wrong actions that is not in the interest of our development and of course our European integration, because that time that we lost in 2021 could be used for different better purposes and results that we would help, for example, European integration or development of the country. And this kind of things, of course, needs to be studied properly and to think what would be the proper way to address them. And we do think that transparency could create that preventive ground for everybody, for donors, for organizations, to think twice before they do something and think twice before they enter this or that action, instead of damaging country's reputation, work more on, promoting something that is in the interest of Georgian citizens. End of the day, they are called mostly civil society organizations.
So, as much as I understand, at this point, there are some organizations which don't think twice before damaging Georgia's image. Did I get it right?
Maybe. I want to believe that they don't think twice before doing that.
On April 3rd, Chairperson of GD faction, Mr. Mdinaradze, said that back in March 2023, the ruling party and donor organizations made an unofficial agreement that in exchange for killing the draft law, donor organizations would make the process of financing local NGOs more transparent. Can you name those donor organizations?
Well, yes, when this law first time was introduced, we had sort of, I would say, surprised questions from some our partners asking why you are doing that when everything is transparent itself. And then we had to show that there are certain things that are not transparent, and that's exactly where we think that problem is created, or that is linked to something that is not in the interests of country's development and right path. And we had, I think throughout this year, we have mentioned several times a couple of organizations, maybe not all of them, but the biggest donors that are engaged in Georgia. And we voiced our concern about European Endowment for Democracy. Speaker of the Parliament mentioned several times that he addressed even with the letter to have like more transparent approach about financing. So this is just one example, but I don't want to, name one or two, because we don't want to make any distinction among countries, among partners, among funds. This should be the rule for everybody who wants to have like funding in Georgia and who wants to influence Georgia's social life, political life. Political life is very important here, and just simple thing, not to hide it.
None of the donor organizations have publicly admitted that they were in talks with the party about this matter. So, is there any evidence to back up your claim?
Well, I can show you the letter. I don't know if it is public, but I know that there were a couple of letters even addressed to some organizations.
Was it like a...
it's just kind request to look at the... No, it's just kind request to look at the situation and take into account Georgia's concerns. And we believe that this is legitimate concern to have more transparency in funding, and that's it. But unfortunately, there wasn't any answer.
Apologies for interrupting, but did I get it right that you've sent those letters, but haven't received answers from them, right?
Yeah, there is, best answer would be the action to have already transparent approach in fundings, which is not the case, unfortunately.
So you made a decision, your party made a decision to withdraw this draft law because, as Mr. Mvinirada said, you made an agreement.
Well, first of all, yes, there is no agreement, like written agreement about that. But
agreements might be an unofficial, but there are no facts either.
It's like a right approach among partners to have more transparent relationship. And especially sometimes this angle of the law is taken from very wrong or just one angle. We are talking about young democracy country which has received lots of aid and assistance from our partners, and this money is important and played important role in the development of the country, and we are very grateful for that. And I think citizens should know also who are those people who are helping to develop this or that sector in Georgia. And there is no single explanation why we should hide if we are doing something good in the interest of Georgia, in the interest of Georgian citizens, in the interest of Georgian nation. So there is no one reason to hide it if the intentions are good. And honestly, these parallels to not democratic countries, when we talk about, similar laws or something like that, it is absolutely inappropriate. We are talking about Georgia, which is established democracy and which is a candidate country of the European Union. And it is just simply not correct to put Georgia on the same level as Russia and have same expectations from Georgia and Georgian government as you may have from Russian one. So that is absolutely invalid, I would say, argument to be afraid of this law, which is about transparency. And I still hear from some people, from citizens, that this is the law to shut down civil society organizations. There is no single ground to think about that this law can be used for such a reason. And expectation from Georgian government that one may have is absolutely invalid when we are talking about democratic country. And then we are questioning whole democratic credentials of Georgia, which is absolutely not relevant for Georgia's European way and European integration, first of all.
Is Georgia established democracy or a developing one?
Well, any democracy needs constant work to keep what we have. I also said that we are young but established already democracy. We see what kind of civil life is in Georgia and how citizens can be active in Georgia, and nobody is repressing them for their views, being it political of any. And to have this correct way of development, even Georgia's democracy, I think that transparency is also important for that. This is extremely important to have these political processes, which is I would say basic ground for any democracy, participation of citizens in these processes. To keep this process transparent, I think that is the best way to go and best way for Georgia's democratic development. Because sometimes you look at also civil society organizations, which are little different from what we see in Western European countries. Sometimes there is some kind of differences when people don't understand. I was asked even by one of the Western journalists why civil society organizations are part of political decision-making process. This is not democratic, because people vote for government and then government is responsible for political decisions and what they need to do in this process. But in Georgia, we have specific situation where civil society organizations want and are playing this role. And I think that is something that we have to take into into account also when we talk about this political process and transparency of political processes.
Did I get it right that one of my foreign colleagues asked you?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
Do you remember who that journalist was?
Well, I don't want to name, but yeah, there was a question. And it's not only one. It's not only one. Such a question exists in democratic society where you have government which is elected by elections, is responsible for political decisions, right? And that is normal. Of course, civil society has its own role to play the role in the political processes, but maybe we are on a little different situation where civil society organizations have different, I would say,
Aims?
weight. No, weight. Just it's about their weight and in this process and their role in this process. Yes.
Why didn't the ruling party implement such law, even right after you came to power?
Sometimes circumstances just dictate what you need to do and when you need to do. Maybe it would be better to have such a law like adopted early in 2000s or maybe earlier, when we saw that these organizations are playing extremely important role in Georgia's development and social and political life. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it would be better and we would not have this situation now and the extreme need to have transparent political process and transparency in this field if we are talking about transparency in other fields. So I can't tell whether it is like too late or, but we have just saying better late than never. So I think it is right momentum once circumstances dictate you that you need to do something to prevent maybe worse development in the country. And I think what Georgia needs now very calm and constant development of society. This society is transformed. This is not the same society as we had like years and decades ago. This is different kind of society. We look at the young generation. They just have different ideas about Georgia because they were born and grown up in different Georgia than we did. And I understand the expectations. They have much higher expectations from Georgia as well. And they compare Georgia to much developed countries than we are comparing maybe like 10 or 20 years ago. So that is the big difference. And I think that is positive difference between, this 10 or 20 years ago, what we had. So that's something, but we need to find correct ways to develop it, to keep our society engaged rightly in these processes, and to learn to respect elections, learn to respect those who win, and also to respect what are the rights and of those who are represented in the parliament when these political intentions are genuine and the interests of Georgian population. So that's one very important thing that we need still to learn in this process of democratic development, and not to always be too emotional on certain things looking around.
While explaining why the TFI law is crucial for Georgia, ruling party leaders often mention Shea Movement, Eastford, or Tbilisi Pride, but they never, ever talk about those NGOs which are working on economic development, education, public health, or even agriculture. Why do you think is that so?
Well, I think when we talk about, first of all, there is no distinction. What we are talking about is general rule for everybody, right? So, and again, I already said, we are extremely grateful for those donors and for those partners who heavily invested in Georgia and Georgia's development. And I think there is no single citizen in this country who has not benefited from that good things. But But when we need to explain the need of something, of course, you are looking at the examples that would create clearer picture why it is important to do and what you want to prevent with this law, not to create problems for anybody, but what you really want to prevent with this law and what you want to give, what kind of information and what transparency serves for Georgian citizens. I think that creates better examples why it is needed. Necessity of the law is clearer there. So that's the only reason why you mentioned there this.
I still don't get it. How come the ruling party leaders don't mention those organizations which have nothing to do with politics?
Well, overthrowing government and illegal things are different things. We are not talking about something illegal and overthrowing government. That is another space where we need to talk, and this is not the case with this law. We don't want to, and this is not the goal of the law, of this law. This law creates kind of preventive measure not to have such kind of developments with the hands of non-governmental organizations, especially when they are financed by our partners that create additional diplomatic problems in these relationships. And that is the best preventive measure for the country to have transparency. And I think that would be better and good for those as well, partners and donor organizations, to see. But look, this transparency is not just Georgian issue, and this is not the only Georgia that discussed that. This is very often discussed with different angles, like from donors' angle, from beneficiaries' angle, in different countries. Recently, there are discussions, even in United States, sometimes to have more transparency about US funding, or in the European Union to have more transparency about EU funding. And I do think that citizens have rights to know where the money is spent. EU citizens as well have rights to know where their money is. And if we have such an organization, and if we are financing, and if we get there, and I think that we can do also that, to be donors, because to give somebody, rest of the world, something good, or share something good, if we are doing that, I think our citizens also will have that necessity to know where their taxpayers' money goes and is spent. Both angles are important here, for donors and for us, for beneficiaries, to know from where and how the money is coming and how it is spent.
As much as I remember, two of your colleagues, Irakli Zarkua and Dimitris Amkharadze, said that after this law is adopted, none of those pro-LGBT, anti-charge and anti-sovereignty organizations will remain in the country.
I don't know which statement you are referring to. I have not heard that, but...
So none of them made any of such comments, right?
I can't tell. I'm not familiar with such kind of statements. But one thing is clear. When we are talking about partners, and we have experience of that, when we are talking about donors and donor assistance, it is important to look at the necessity of the country, of course, and society, and to direct this, I would say, assistance in that direction where there is a need. And we had very good practice of doing that. I remember back in 2014, I think, when association agreement was signed with the European Union. Later, we had excellent cooperation with donor organizations, providing them directions where we would need their expertise, help to implement association agreement conditions and association agreement as such, and to make good progress for the country. And we have this experience of excellent cooperation, and I think this should be back in our relationship with donors. But we should not forget that except of that partners, there are other countries also who have interests here, and we need to know to make it transparent where this money is going, in which organizations and what they are doing. And I think that is excellent preventive measure for country to have right way of development. I think general problem we have here is like lack of genuine, lack of frank discussion without, extreme approaches. And that is the biggest problem I do see for this parliament as well. When we try, or when somebody tries to kill this space for discussion, we cannot have healthy discussion when we are labeling things. This space is killed for healthy discussion and good argumented, positions. That would be healthier to have that arguments, who thinks what, but we have never heard that. Only thing you are hearing is just a statement, just a label. No, this is bad, but nobody says why it is bad. And if somebody dares and starts naming why it is bad, none of these statements is correct, and none of this understanding is correct about the law. And that is the problem. We don't have normal calm space for discussion, because you remember how it was not discussed last year, I would say, and how in a very difficult situation was it discussed this year. And myself, I do like that arguments from a position to see what their problem is. When they say just a label, I don't see the problem, because I do know that this is not the right thing, and this is not the Russian law, for example. And for me, this is not an argument. I need arguments why they think that this law can kill civil society in Georgia. There is no argument. You can't hear it.
By the way, both draft laws introduced by the EU and France place the emphasis not only on the source of financing, but also on the activities of the entities. So wouldn't it be better if the ruling party made decisions according to source of financing and the activities of the entities?
I don't think that this is the right approach to kind of create different groups of non-governmental organizations and have like a division, this kind or that kind, and who will be defining that? That's even worse, I think, and that's even more complicated in Georgia's case. I think that simplest approach that we took with this law is just, transparency for everybody and full stop, nothing more and nothing less, just transparency, and that's it. And there is no assessment, nothing about the activities, and even law says that it can't be used for hampering, or stopping operation of this or that organization. So I think what is the most important is to understand what is the objective of the law. When we make mistake in understanding of objective of the law, that's where the problem starts, and that's where the interpretation starts about the articles of the law. And I do follow the discussions in different countries in the European Union. Nowhere it's easy, and everywhere exists different positions about similar laws, even about the European directive, which is discussed in the European Parliament. And that's normal. That's about democracy. There should be different opinions about it, but it's not like here. Like we want to kill all kind of discussions when somebody sees the problem, and we do see the problem, and we want to propose to fix it, and we want to propose the way forward, how we can fix this. And we see such a resistance. No, you have no right to discuss it. If you see the problem, yes, you have the problem, but you should not discuss it. I don't think that is right approach to have. Right approach would be the way Europeans are doing that. Discuss it. Everybody voices their opinion. Fairs, if such fairs exist, but also safeguards, if there are safeguards to safeguard better operation of the civil society organizations in this society. That would be healthier, but unfortunately we are very far from that healthy discussion, and we see that this process is in the street rather than in the parliament, which is not helping to understand the objectives of the law.
So you asked me this question: who would differentiate them if you've made such changes in the draft law? But the ruling party leaders are already differentiating them by not talking about those organizations which have nothing to do with politics, while explaining why adopting this law is crucial.
Well, I explained that. That is just easier to explain the certain things. That's it. So there is no differentiation, planned to have according the law, and nothing like that is considered or envisaged by any article of the law, to have such bad guys, good guys, and this is not the goal of the law.
If it's wrong to differentiate them, why do the EU and France do it so?
Well, look at the context. It's a little different. I don't know how it is differentiated there. I can't enter that discussion, like differentiation of law. What they are also talking is about foreign influence. And of course, why they started to talk about foreign influence was also explained by different studies. And you can find that report from French Senate, I think, which is about mostly references about security threats and what they see as the ground for adoption of such a law. And we see also, different kind of scandals triggered discussions about directive of transparency of funding in the European Union level. But there is one key thing also when we talk about European directive. What European Union is trying to do now is, first of all, to unify the approach among member states, because they do see also, Brussels sees that every single state has their own approach, and there is no kind of protection of European common area. By the way, that amendment was introduced in French law not to cover EU member states, but this is not obligation in other cases, and this is not the common rule for everybody. That's what European Union is trying to do, to create kind of common approach and rule for every single state, and that is different angle. That is quite kind of we don't have, because we are not members of the European Union, and you are not talking about common European area today. But once you are in, of course, if such a rule exists in the European Union, will cover Georgia, and Georgia's legislation will cover same way any other EU member state. So that's...
Is there a single NGO financed by the Western donors which announced that even if the law is adopted, they will continue operating in Georgia?
Well, I don't remember that we had such a discussion, but I don't think that this law is creating any unfavorable ground to have future cooperation with donors that are working in the interests of Georgia and Georgians and Georgian citizens. So I don't see that can create any problems for them just to, work transparently and continue doing good things they are doing. So we never had that discussion. But me personally, I don't have that experience, so I can't refer to any of them. So.
Well, here's a statement made by Caritas Georgia.
Which one? Statement?
Caritas Georgia.
Yeah.
If the draft law on transparency of foreign influence is adopted, those people who are in need will no longer be able to receive assistance from us.
This law does not forbid receiving assistance from any donor organizations.
Yeah, but
this is not about forbidding.
What else would it mean if not leaving the country?
But that's again we go back to the discussion nature we have here, and this that's not only about internal discussion. That is also kind of international discussion we are having about the law, because we do have this discussion, or if it can be called discussion, we do hear statements from outside of the country, and we do hear concerns around on international level. But again, here is also lack of arguments when we talk about something, and that's also something very important. If you see the problem in something, you have to indicate what is the problem, what exactly is the problem, because transparency itself can't be a problem, even in international relations, if we are talking about good faith and partnership and friendship, especially. So, and strategic partnership. And when we are talking about candidate country for the European Union, why it should be an issue among Georgia and EU member states, and why it should be concern for the European Union at all, if we are talking about something very basic and very important. That is will of Georgian state, that is will of Georgian government, Georgian people to be part of the European Union. And if we have in this process help from European Union, I think there is nothing to hide if it is helping Georgia's European future within the European Union. So that's why it is very difficult to understand concerns about transparency. If there is a misunderstanding of the objective of the law and somebody thinks that it is targeting the non-governmental organizations to kill them, that's another thing, and this is not the case for the law. So again, so nature of discussion locally and internationally should be very much oriented to arguments and proper and understanding why we need it and why it is needed. It is needed for better future of Georgia, more secure and stable future of Georgia, and stable political processes in this very, very difficult neighborhood where lots of bad things are happening around us.
So you admit that there are no guarantees that if the draft law is adopted, organizations funded by the West will remain in the country, and yet your party plans to adopt it. I mean, is it worth it?
We both are citizens of Georgia, right? And I'm sure we both care about good future of Georgia and stable future. And I'm sure every single citizen who is outside today or yesterday and protesting the law wants the same stable future for Georgia and good future for Georgia. So if we are talking about foreign assistance for that future, what is to hide? Why not to continue? Why, if we are helping today Georgia to be more prosperous, better, beautiful country, and with European future, and I'm sure we will have very intensive process of European integration where there will be lots of European funds needed in this process, like every other candidate country is needed in this process, and expertise from our friends and colleagues. So I don't see that is something to hide. If somebody wants to hide something, then of course I have very natural, and I think you should also have a natural question, why we need to hide all this? What's the reason? So I think that all this partnership where we have good faith and good goals, there is nothing to worry, and there is no fear to stop this partnership on cooperation on different things. I don't see that this law can be obstacle for such a partnerships which are based on good faith and partnership.
Don't you think that what scares them the most is that each and every one of them will be labeled as foreign influence agents with no arguments? So who would want to be called an agent?
Well, first of all, there is no agent, but a foreign influence. And talking about foreign influence, I mean, if it is a fact, we have to look at the fact, and that's happening everywhere. Foreign influence exists, and there are different means to implement that foreign influence. And foreign influence, again and over again, does not necessarily mean something bad, first of all. If such a bad thing is foreign influence, then you have other means to tackle it. But we are talking about good interests of the country, because that is the worry, and that's where worry is coming, because I don't think that any others who have bad intentions in the country are that vocal. But in this situation, we have to look at that and let point what's the angle.
So no matter what they do, only because they receive funding from foreign countries, they are working for foreign powers, right?
Law is defining who can be, those who are implementing or doing that foreign influence. But what is the concern, as I understand, stigmatization, right?
Yes.
Which is something also discussed in the European Union when Europeans are discussing their directive on that. And that is the worry, what is the right name to sort of explain public who is what and who is doing what. So if you followed discussion in the parliament, there was an offer about the name, and we did not got any answer about that. What would be the right formulation? Even last year, when we discussed, when it was proposed as the foreign agents law, there was again statements coming from ruling party. We are open to discuss the right name for that, but if this is the fact that money is coming from outside, that's, I think the name for that is foreign. And that's what it is. It's kind of facts. And I don't think that it is a stigma. Stigma is something else. But when we are talking about facts, I don't know, we can find other name of this fact, but that is what we think is the right name to say. So, every embassy is foreign influence, right? We have our embassies that is Georgian influence or Georgian interest in that country, and that is normal, right? The law is not covering that part because that is absolutely clear for everybody. That's Georgian embassy in any other country is Georgian interest and is doing everything possible to implement that. So are other countries and other embassies as well acting here. This is their representation, and they are doing everything in their own country's interest, and that is normal ABC of international relations. But now we are talking about organizations which are mostly funding from sometimes other governments, but they are also supporters or implementers or whatever we can call them of the interests mainly of those governments or for those organizations or actors. So what's wrong to know which interests? Mostly if we are talking about coinciding the interests, we don't have any problem really, right? It's okay, and what to hide. But if we are talking about, something that is against Georgia's interests, that is different thing. But I don't think that those partners who are voicing mostly concerns should have any ground with that. I don't want to believe in this.
One of the examples I remember is related to the Association of Young Lawyers, members of which have been protecting the interests of the family of national hero Georgi Antsukhelidze against Russia at the international courts.
Yes, that's fine.
So, are they working for foreign powers?
Yeah, why everybody understands that foreign influence necessarily means to be against Georgia? That's what we want to prevent, not to have such cases in the country. And that's what other countries also think, to prevent that bad influences from outside. And the best way to prevent bad influences is to have transparent environment for every single good interest in the country. That's the best way democratic country can approach this topic, because I have even heard some very hardline solutions for that. Why security services are not doing that? They can do that check. I'm sorry, but we are talking about different kind of country, which is democratic country, which has strategic and special relationship with European partners. We want to be part of the European Union, and we are not even talking about, bad interests here. So the best way to prevent that bad interests, bad influence, bad foreign influence in the country is to keep good foreign influence transparent.
With the Loyal Party Plus Europe, those organizations which have been receiving funds from around the globe from the day one will soon be labeled as foreign influence agents. Did I say it right? That they will be labeled this way.
What do you mean labeled?
I mean, according to the law,
they will be just
registered
registering their income, I would say, finances, just once a year. There is not such a thing that labeling them, because that was also mentioned in our discussions, that there will be label, and what are the ways. We know some countries who are doing differently that what they are doing to label things. But we are talking about registration. Have you ever checked that transparency register of the European Union? It exists. It's a little different. Maybe I don't want to enter legal nuances of this registry, but there is a registry where all these NGOs and organizations are registered there. So this kind of things exist. So why we necessarily look at that registering somewhere, labeling?
Okay.
Or stigmatizing.
Let's ask these questions in a different method. With the Loyal Party Plus Europe, those organizations which have been receiving funds from the West from the day one will
not only West, everywhere. We don't have
from
such
everywhere.
From everywhere.
Right point. Will soon have to register themselves as foreign influence agents.
Yeah, there is no agent such a thing.
No agent.
Yeah. But yes, they will be registered.
In the draft law which I've seen,
yes,
Article number 1 says that those organizations which receive must be...
Yeah. Okay, so
we must have a look at it.
Whatever, yeah.
We must surely have a look at it, because the last time I saw it, it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and I saw that it was agents. That's what I'm saying, because it is not...
Well, registry, we are talking about registry where they will be registered, right?
If you have a minute or two, should we check this out? Absolutely.
Yeah. But I have the first draft here.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think we had second reading of that, and we still have third reading. If something is incorrect still remaining in the law, probably will be because ჩვენი ინგლისური თარგმანი კანონი.
But I'm looking forward to see the Georgian version.
We have on transparency of foreign influence and registry, foreign power registration. National Agency Public Registry will foreign power pursuing to the proper specific.
May I check my phone too?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so organization pursuing the interest of foreign power. That's how they will be registered.
Give me a second.
The organization, it's article here, annual declaration, article 6. An entity registered as an organization pursuing the interest of a foreign power. Shall, in January, financial.
So, let's...
which article?
Let's check it. If this is the... If we both read the right one. Should we try a Georgian one? Because this is from the Info Parliament.
Yeah, but there was second reading, because I think something...
Do I get it right that at the second reading you removed that part, mentioning agents at all?
Yeah, there was something about this name as well. But I don't have the second reading final text, and there is also third reading, which is all about correction that's things.
So as much as I understand,
So that's
word agents will absolutely be removed from.
May I check?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because,
would be glad to check it out.
Because that is something we discussed also. So many messages are coming in now.
Let's check if the camera will sense wrong.
Yeah. No. If they answer now, it's like.
Let's cross the fingers.
Because the name was changed and everything should be changed according the name. სახელწოდების მიხედვით უნდა ყოფილიყო და შიგნი არის უცხოური ძალის ინტერესების გამტარებელი ორგანიზაციები. ქართული ტექსტი გაქვს. აბა მეექვსე მუხლი ნახეთ. მეექვსე მუხლი როგორ?
მეექვსე მუხლი ყოველწლიურად საფინანსო დეკლარაცია. ხო. უცხოური გავლენის აგენტად რეგისტრირებული სუბიექტი ვალდებულია.
შესაძლებელია მე მგონი. უცხოური გავლენის
აგენტის აგენტად რეგისტრირებული სუბიექტის რეგისტრაციის გაუქმება. მონიტორინგი.
ხო, ну whatever არის ახლა არ პასუხობს ეს რომ გადავამოწმო.
So let's try this way. We will not mention in this version of the interview agents as long as this is a problematic one, but the point of the question will not be changed, by the way.
Yeah.
With the Lawyer Party Plus Europe, those organizations which are receiving funds from around the globe from the day one will soon have to register as organizations of foreign influence. My question is this: when did the ruling party find out that there were organizations working for foreign influence in this country?
Well, I think this is not just Georgian Dream political party discovery here. We all know that such organizations exist, such things exist in the world. And this is not only Georgia and Georgian case where we have such an organization. So we are not talking about when it was discovered and when we saw that, but we see certain things that are related to the actions or funding of the organizations and the way how it is handled and solution where we see if they to prevent certain developments is to make it transparent, not to forbid foreign influence, not to close down any organization doing that in Georgia, or not to create any obstacles for their operation. Just one thing, to make this operation transparent, and that's it. So that's what we found out, or is the right way to approach it, not the fact that there is such a thing as foreign influence or foreign influence organizations in Georgia or any other country.
The reason why I'm asking you this question is that some of your colleagues, including Rati Unatamishvili and Givimi Kanadze, were receiving funds from the donor organizations.
Oh, there are many, not only those.
And many others. So we can assume that both of them and many others were working for foreign influence in the past, right?
Yes, and what's wrong with that, if it is such a thing, if they have done many good things? And there were many other names mentioned in this process of discussion, whether it was good that this person was working with the, I used to have excellent cooperation with many organizations, and I hope I will continue to have such. I have excellent cooperation with German organizations, and there is, there is clear understanding. There is an interest. There is my interest, and if we have common interest, we work perfectly there. That's it. So I don't see anything negative working for the organization that is implementing foreign interests in the country if this interest absolutely coincides with the interests of Georgian people, Georgian citizens, and Georgian state. And again, these organizations, with the hands of those people who were working with them, and most of them are Georgians very often, right? They are not necessarily originated from these countries. They hire Georgians and they work for these organizations, and we are not talking about individuals with this law. That is the key here, and no individual should have that understanding that he or she will be labeled or she will be registered anywhere. No. We are talking only about organizations, and nobody talks about those people who are working for this organization.
We urge leaders to refrain from adopting legislation that can compromise Georgia's EU path. Joseph Borrell, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. The draft law on transparency of foreign influence is not consistent with Georgia's EU aspiration and its accession. Charles Michel, President of the European Council. I oppose any attempts by the Georgian government to reintroduce the draft law on foreign agents or foreign influence. Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO. Ms. Botchorishvili, could you explain to us, why are the high officials of the EU and NATO against this draft law?
First of all, it is also important. Well, of course, it is not pleasant to hear all these statements, especially when somebody is referring to Georgia's European future and the European path, and that is extremely sensitive for Georgian citizens. I understand it, and I think everybody should understand that. That's why it is more important to have more responsibility when we talk what we are talking about. And I think best answer to all this was a statement by Prime Minister offering anybody to present legal opinions why transparency is against anything that is related to democracy and European future of the country. Yes, we are following these statements, and not only statements, we have seen resolution as well and many other things. And door is open if somebody has concerns, if somebody wants to go deeper in these discussions, if somebody wants to help how to do the best way, because we do see that as a challenge, we do see as a problem for Georgia's future development, for stability, for development of Georgia's democracy. And if we have any other recommendations how it can be fixed or handled, we would be happy to discuss it. But just a statement that the law, which is not studied by any of these people, is just against the European integration, and there is no substance of the law analyzed, and there is no such a discussion, is not helping, definitely, and vice versa. It's fueling that negative mode that absolutely kills the space for discussion, and that's dangerous. That is dangerous for any democratic society not to have discussion around something, even stupid things maybe, if discussion is the best way to do and to decide things. And when we are helping somebody to kill and completely abolish that space for discussion, that's very dangerous for democracy.
If working in the parliament with other parties is no longer possible because you don't hear any valuable arguments anymore, wouldn't it be better if you and Mr. Darchiashvili, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, travel to the Western capitals and explain to the high officials of the EU and NATO why there are no problems with this law?
Well, first of all, the best place where Georgian laws should be discussed is Georgian parliament. Let's agree on that. That's any sovereign country has place where they are discussing their own laws, first of all. Of course, these laws have international, I would say, angles, and there are plenty of international organizations that are giving assessment or recommendations to the countries. And we know that the law is discussed by Venice Commission, who can propose legal arguments about the law, and we will see what will be there.
Last year?
Sorry?
And as much as I remember, they did it last year.
Legal arguments? No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
No. That
Venice
was,
Commission wasn't
we
against
just
this
stopped it. It was just removed from the table. There was no discussion. But the law which is discussed now, first reading, I think, was already sent to Venice Commission. That is one thing. But again, there is an open door. If somebody has legal arguments, how this law can be framed, any ideas are welcome. Let's agree that we have certain need to make this process transparent. And if anybody has better idea than registering organizations that are receiving foreign funds in one registry and nothing else, if there is something else legally binding in the world to oblige organizations to make it, transparent, their funding. Let's see. Let's discuss. We don't know. What we see is registers everywhere where it is, and everybody is talking about registries and registry for, lobbyists and for this or that. So that is the best way. And we have registries for our financial declarations, and nobody is killing anybody for that. And we are not dead after we publish our financial declarations. Vice versa, that is for the healthier democratic process in the country to have more transparent political process. That's it.
You said that the place where such things must be discussed is the parliament.
Yes.
Then why did Prime Minister Kobakhidze invite ambassadors of different countries to talk about it on live in front of the media?
They are representatives of those countries or organizations that are voicing the concerns, and they are the most legitimate representatives of any opinion from those countries or organizations. They are ambassadors, like word providers, position providers in this.
But the reason why I ask this question is that you said that these laws should be discussed at the Parliament.
We are not members, unfortunately, yet members of European Parliament to participate in the discussions or elaboration of European directives or European legislations. What we are doing here in the process of European integration, we are working here to adjust our legislation to European one, and that's what we are doing for 10 years now, especially since the association agreement was signed. And that's the only thing we can do, find the best ways how Georgian reality would digest this or that European directive. In the process of elaboration of these directives, Georgians are not participating, right? But this is our will to have more European legislation aligned to European standards, aligned to European directives and recommendations. That's what we do, but everything is done here in this parliament. And we are talking about Georgian legislation. And of course, there is only one place where it can be discussed and adopted, that is Georgian parliament. But again, that is our goodwill. When we see such an international reactions about the law and such a statements you just read, the door is open. If there are arguments, legal arguments, if you want, because when you are saying that something is bad, you have to say why it's bad. We can't stay there we have a problem, we have an issue, and we need to solve it. How to solve it? You can't just tell that, no, you should not do it. So that's why the door is open. That's why the offer was made to ambassadors. If you have any good ideas coming from capitals or relevant organizations or relevant players, please bring it to the table and discuss it, because we are talking about transparency. We don't have understanding that Georgia needs to be discussed at any other states, especially the bad ones, and have same perception about Georgia as one may have about Russia. And we do think that this Georgian law, which is discussed in the Georgian parliament, is very much needed for Georgia's democracy and democratic development of the country.
So did I get
Any argument, vice versa, is welcome to this.
So did I get it right that none of the EU and NATO high officials have any arguments?
So far, no.
And yet they criticize this law?
So far, we have not heard any arguments about any article of the law or any, objective. What we see only perceptions and very wrong interpretations of the objectives of the law. So far, it is that. I don't know what will be tomorrow. Tomorrow, maybe we will see any arguments, and we also have right to discuss it as an argument, whether it is valid or not, to take into account, or that is sovereign right, of course, of the parliament to do that. But anyway, this is declared. The door is open. If somebody wants to help in this process, feel free to do it.
By the way, what do you think Mr. Borom means in his words? This legislation can compromise Georgia's EU path.
These strong statements that we hear, of course, creates very sensitive approaches among Georgians and, of course, officials as well. But again, this is a statement telling us from our perspective, that the law, which is about transparency, can be obstacle for the European integration. And the argument why transparency can be obstacle for European integration, transparency of political processes, transparency that we learned a lot about from our partners, why it can be obstacle for European integration. The arguments are needed in this, because we as a partner of the European Union, partner of other players in this modern world, are voicing that we have concern here and we need to address this concern. So that's the position. And if you have concern, just tell us objective ground of your concerns. Maybe we can somehow find solution. What are your concerns about transparency of your fundings in Georgia? If it is the ground for your concerns that no, somebody does not want to make it transparent what they are sending to Georgia. But it's hard to say how transparency can be obstacle for.
Yes, but these are the people who make decisions with 27 country leaders whether Georgia will be granted with anything.
Yes, today they are people who are making decisions, and we are extremely grateful with 20 leaders of those 27 member states who made that decision last December. And I said even in my comment, they took, historic responsibility on their shoulders. I don't know whether tomorrow they will be in power, how they will end up in their own country's history. But for our history, these 27 leaders made a history for Georgia as a candidate country.
27 or 26? As much as I remember, Prime Minister Orban left the table.
Well, he is very vocal supporter of Georgia's European integration, and I don't want to question that support.
Got it.
What we have from Hungary when it comes Georgia's European integration. So today these 27 member states and leaders. Tomorrow will be another ones. You know, they are democratic countries. Leaders are coming and going, but there are responsible persons for certain countries, and we are talking about Georgia, and responsibility for Georgia and Georgia's development can't lie on the shoulders of 27 member states. The responsibility for Georgia's stability, for Georgia's better future, for Georgia's democratic development lies on the shoulder of Georgian politicians here in this country, like any other country.
Including Georgia's EU and NATO path?
Of course, that as well, but that depends, of course, a lot on the other side, because we are talking about integration. Integration is not one-way street. It cannot happen without that. That's why we need to talk. And that's why it is important to open negotiations about the EU accessions. That's why we need to know clearly conditions, not just statements, because we all know that door of the European Union, which is open for us, will mean full integration of Georgia after a few years. And these years should be used to talk about how we are doing that, on which conditions. And we have to understand that in this process, Georgia will have its own positions and the European Union will have its own positions, and we have to work how to bring these positions closer together. And that's what we are looking forward to close this chapter of speculations, which started a long time ago and was very, very active last year and last 2 years, questioning Georgia's European path, which is absolutely relevant and is used a lot to destabilize Georgia internally, and to sit down around the table and to talk how we can bring as soon as possible Georgia within the European Union. We know that we have lots of things to do at home, and we also know that the European Union itself needs to prepare for next enlargement. And I think we also deserve transparency in this process, how these discussions is handled in the European Union and what we are doing on our side to access the European Union.
Do you think that if the draft law is adopted, the EU will still open negotiations on accession with us?
Well, I think that we should not use this kind of things to blackmail or to create that kind of environment of, talking with this language with partners. We all need to understand that European integration is not an easy process. And we need to overcome different obstacles in coming years. And that will be much easier for Georgia and much profitable, I would say, for Georgia as a country, as a state, as a nation, to have unified Georgian positions in this process. That's how we can keep Georgia united. That's how we can keep Georgia protected within the European Union as well, because nobody else will protect your interests if you don't do so. And that's normal. Nobody else is protecting French interests in European Union other than French government or French, right? And same goes to any other country. And we have to understand that is union of 27 countries today, having their own interests, and they all talk. Then they all present their own interests around the table. And especially when you want to join that club, which we understand that this club has their own rules and we have to adjust. That's why we need negotiations. How, when, what time, what's the time frame of implementation? Everybody, those countries, all those countries which are the members of the European Union have done that. They have negotiated their European integration path. And that's what we are looking for, to look not with just, simple statements and labels and perceptions to this process. It needs very serious discussions, because Georgia's accession to the European Union is not that simple thing, because that's for European Union as well is absolutely new geopolitical reality, and we do have some things to talk about in this reality.
Is it still worth it if you're not sure whether adopting this law will create problems for the country or not?
Well, everything regarding that is little bit speculations, I would say, because end of the day we don't know what will be the main ground for decision making for 27 member states. Of course, there should not be something that creates additional obstacles for this process. But I do think that once we are voicing that we are concerned about something, and once we are voicing that something is important for Georgia, not to silence civil society, no, to make political process transparent, I think this voice also needs to be heard from partners, because goal for this is to keep stability and democratic development of the country, and not to let anybody to deviate from this democratic development way, which is essential for Georgia's European integration. That's the goal, and I do think that we need to be heard in a more honest way, and not to look only at the perceptions and bring very not relevant parallels with other states, and to make this discussion more substance oriented, and to make this relationship more beneficial for both sides and everybody.
Article 78 of the Constitution of Georgia, written by back then Speaker of the Parliament and now Prime Minister of Georgia, Mr. Gobakhidze, himself reads, "The constitutional bodies shall take all measures within the scope of their competences to ensure the full integration of Georgia into the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization." Can you explain to us how come the draft law, criticized by almost all the high officials of the EU and NATO, isn't in the contradiction with the 78th article of the Constitution?
No, it's not. It's not against Article 27, and you cannot just simply undermine whole intention of Georgian government and all the work that Georgian government and parliament as well, but especially government is representative of the country in this relationship, is doing for country's European integration. I do think that Georgia's application for EU membership is not a joke. And anything what we have done to bring country to that very level was not a joke. And it was not easy work neither. It was related to very, very, very complicated reforms and transformation of the country in this very, very difficult, unsecure environment. Once you are occupied, your 20% is occupied. Once you have foreign military presence on your territory, that's extremely challenging to do what we are doing. And honestly, our many partners and colleagues are impressed what Georgia has achieved, and that's why we are talking about European integration seriously. So we can't blame now Parliament, which is talking about the need of transparency in the political process, is violating Article 27, that is about... 78. Violating Article 78 about Georgia's European integration. Again, the topic that we are talking about is coming from the necessity for countries' democratic development and transparent political process that is also very important for democratic development. That's what we are talking about. That's what we have in our minds when we vote for transparency law. And of course, it is very painful when we see such a bad interpretations of the objective of this piece of legislation. I'm 100% sure that end of the day, everybody will understand the real objective of this law, and everybody will see that this is not the case, that Georgia wants to silence anybody. And I do believe that finally everybody will understand that Georgia is not the country which can be silenced, and Georgian society is not a society which can be silenced. And this is not the government which has that objective to silence anybody in this country.
Back in December 2023, the European Council granted Georgia candidate status on the understanding that Georgia would take the relevant steps as set out in a Commission's recommendations. How many of those 9 recommendations have been fulfilled, and what are your expectations for December?
Well, the work on these recommendations has been done in different directions. Of course, these recommendations that are, I would say, constant, related to constant important topics in this relationship, like corruption and judicial reform and this and that. That requires, of course, like constant work as well. So what has been done so far, that will be assessed by Commission. That is the European Commission who is assessing the steps that Georgia is taking to implement these recommendations, and I'm not the one who is entitled to assess that, but very important steps has been already taken. Key here is also elections is part of recommendations, and I do believe that everything that is related to free and fair elections in this country is very important to look from that angle as well to those topics, and also to understand that there are many challenges that needs to be tackled in this process, not to repeat what we had before and not to lose time for next steps with the European Union and countries' development. So that's why we do need to be careful and working hard on different areas, and it's not just ticking boxes, that recommendations that's related to our life, that's related to our political life as well, and dynamic of the development of the country. And I do believe that Georgia has done many things that makes us proud when we talk about fighting corruption or even like improving judicial system in the country. And I think that steps will be appropriately assessed. And we also have certain challenges that, for example, when we talk about disinformation, this is not only EU's concern, that is big concern for Georgia. If you look at the media coverages, that's very difficult to find the truth, and it's very difficult to make your voice heard and to have objective information about Georgia and objective look at Georgia. That's also very important, and disinformation or misinformation coming from Georgia is also influencing that process. So when we talk about, recommendation or step number 1, that is disinformation, fighting against disinformation or fighting disinformation, that's same way important for Georgia as well from Georgian angle. So that's what we need to do, to have very objective look where Georgia is, and we do believe that Georgia is not behind any other candidate country, to have right to be in the process of negotiations with the European Union. And I also do think that that is extremely important to do that as soon as possible, because that will create really more, I would say, favorable environment for introducing each other's opinion on this or that thing, and help faster integration of Georgia into the European Union.
On 29th of April, the party held one of the biggest rallies in the history of modern Georgia. The slogan of the rally was Homeland, Language, Faith. Do implementing 9 recommendations of the EU contradict these famous words written by founding father of Georgia, Ilia Chavchavadze.
I praise that words a lot, and this is not just a word, 3 words for me. It's a whole philosophy of Georgia, and the whole philosophy of what we are fighting for, and what we are protecting, and why we need European Union. That's key thing to understand what Georgia wants and what is the importance and meaning of the European Union, and why we are aspiring to be part of the European Union, to protect what we cherish. And what we cherish is very much, I would say, voiced in the shortest possible way in these 3 words. And that is essential for our European future. And this is also essential for understanding what Georgians want with European Union, and what we aspire for. That's whole. I mean, we can talk a lot, and we can analyze every single word, but that is the best way to how to say, provide whole Georgia's philosophy why we need European Union as well. We need to protect these 3, and we see European Union as the instrument or as the framework where we will feel and we will see these 3 very important things protected for Georgia. And this is important factor.
So if those 9 recommendations don't contradict
I
this?
don't think that European integration, that is kind of mother of 9 recommendations, can contradict or will contradict anything related to Georgian identity and Georgia.
And last but not least, what is it your party wants to prove, either to the people of Georgia or to international partners, by adopting this law?
We are not proving anything. We're just addressing the challenge for our country, and we are addressing something that we think is very important to prevent, I would say, bad influence on Georgia's democratic development. And this is not like, fight to prove who is strong and who is weak, or who is bad or who is good. This is just something that we think is in Georgia's interest and better development of Georgian democracy. That is, again, only about transparency and transparency of political process, especially when we talk about wider political process and decisions where we see non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations as players is extremely important. That's what we are talking about, and that's very important to understand.
Maka Botchorishvili, thank you for your answers. Thank you for letting Georgia Today interview you.
Well, thank you for your interest, and thank you for interesting questions and giving me this opportunity to talk to you and voice my opinion on different things. So thank you.